Today on Hearts of Heroes, an explosive fire rages through an historic apartment building, threatening the lives of everyone inside.
We knew this was a real deal.
Plus, a man loses consciousness in a furious house fire.
I ran back to the bathroom, grabbed my phone, and that's the last thing I remember.
Conditions deteriorated rapidly. He wasn't breathing, and he was burned.
These intrepid heroes show us that bravery truly does matter.
Many first responders utilize computers and modern technology to handle emergencies as quickly as possible. But what happens when those computers go down?
That's exactly what happened when a blaze erupted in a historic apartment building in Portland, Oregon. Luckily, heroes stepped up: firefighters, emergency dispatch, and one brave maintenance worker.
The coastal city of Portland, Oregon is a diverse mix of past and present.
There's a tremendous amount of history to our city. Portland is a mosaic of older buildings along with modern construction. We have a lot of these historic structures that are within our response areas.
One of the historic structures is the May apartment building.
It's a 4-story, unreinforced masonry building that was constructed about 115 years ago.
We have tile from the 40s and 20s in it. We have vintage refrigerators. We have clawfoot tubs, along with a vintage telephone in every single unit.
But this landmark almost disappeared from the skyline shortly after it was built.
Tragically, in 1921, a first responder lost his life trying to save this majestic structure from a devastating fire.
You fast forward 102 years later, and we're right back in this building with what turned out to be a much larger fire problem.
In May of 2023, this building was ground zero for one of the worst fires in Portland's history.
This is a building that has had some frequent false alarms with the fire system, people artificially pulling the pull stations. So the residents weren't always considering the audible alarm as an actual event.
Since the last, I think, 6 or 7 months, we've had 24 false alarms in that building. So you can understand why the occupants think that number 25 is not a significant fire.
One person who did take the alarm seriously was the building's maintenance worker, Hector Velasquez.
I was working on the first floor in one of the apartments. A person came to me and said that there was a fire upstairs. So the first thing I did is I went to make sure everyone got out of the building. And I was starting to knock on doors because the people didn't know there was a fire.
Hector saw smoke coming out of one of the apartments, and he immediately went upstairs to the top floor to let the residents up there know that we had a fire in the building and that they needed to evacuate immediately.
A lot of people would go, oh my goodness, I better get out and leave or whatever, you know? He didn't think that way. He responded.
It wasn't about him. Sorry. It's about the residents. It's about the people that lived here. He cared more about them than himself, and he wanted to make sure they all got out safely.
911, is there an emergency?
Meanwhile, 911 calls went out to emergency dispatchers. But there was a problem, a big problem.
We had scheduled maintenance for our computer system that day.
This sophisticated system transmits vital information directly to first responder vehicles. This includes the exact location of an emergency, the building's blueprints, fire vehicles' whereabouts, water line and hydrant locations, as well as traffic reports.
We did not have the capability to send information to our responders in the field through the computer system.
Which meant that we had no maps of the building en route. We did not have maps to show us where the hydrants were at, so we effectively were flying blind.
So that day, I voiced the original fire call that came out, gave them the address and the details that were given by the caller. Normally, on a normal operation day, would have come via the computer system.
Now, as Hector was going floor to floor helping people evacuate their apartments, dispatchers manually directed first responders to the fire.
We were conducting a fire inspection really close to where the fire took place, and so we were roughly 45 seconds to being on scene.
You could see, obviously, it was serious from the outside right when we arrived. We knew this was a real deal, and we knew that we were going to have to go in and do something quickly.
Firefighters jumped into rescue mode.
We had people on the fire escape trying to get out of the building, and there's no ladder at the bottom of it for people to get down. We have to throw a ladder to it to get people off. So that took precedence over everything else.
Meanwhile, Jared Borland went in the building to help evacuate people from their apartments.
We were telling people they need to get out. By the time we got to the 3rd floor, there was a lot heavier smoke. We were just telling everybody they needed to get out. It was time to go.
These first firefighters on the scene quickly realized there was just no way that they could fight this fire by themselves. Coming up.
Firefighters on the street were getting hit as the building is essentially blowing up.
But first, some advice should you find yourself in a building next to a fire.
Large structure fires are inherently dangerous, with flames often spreading to multiple floors in just seconds.
These fires, like any other, also pose the threat of spreading to neighboring structures. Should you find yourself in a building next door to a raging fire, carefully and methodically exit your structure and maintain a safe distance until the blaze has been extinguished.
Fires spread quickly, so always be sure to be mindful and listen to the first responders. Remember, when it comes to staying safe, awareness matters.
In May of 2023, a massive fire broke out in an historic apartment building in Portland, Oregon.
I've been in the job for almost 17 years. This was the most monumental fire I've ever been on in my career.
With the first crew on scene in rescue mode, backups thankfully showed up soon after.
We had fire that, on arrival, was blowing out the window and extending to the 4th floor.
The construction style of those buildings does lend to rapid fire progression.
So once the fire gets in the wall, it's going to go up and it's going to spread out.
Just minutes later, the blaze was raging and truly out of control. Firefighters called a 4th alarm.
By the time I got to the 4th floor, there were several companies working on getting the fire knocked down. So I jumped in to start doing the search, but the visibility on the 4th floor was completely, there was nothing.
At a certain point, the fire was growing so rapidly and conditions were deteriorating inside for those crews so quickly that we had to leave the building because maybe you put your own people in a position where now they are in some serious trouble.
But some were just not ready to surrender and asked for more time.
We did have a company on the 2nd floor say, we can't come out yet, we're still pulling people out.
Reluctant to risk the lives of these heroic firefighters, Chief Miller denied their request, immediately ordering all remaining first responders to exit the structure.
Maybe a minute after we got all of our folks and the residents out of the building, we had what looked like a smoke explosion on the 4th floor. Firefighters on the street were getting hit with debris as the building is essentially blowing up.
Now the fire was threatening the buildings next door.
We had a structure that was 2 feet to the south, a residence apartment complex. So we do what's called exposure protection. We take large hoses and we run them between the structures to maintain a cooling feature, a water curtain, and we saved that building.
After 24 grueling hours, the fire was finally out.
We were there fighting fire for over a day. We didn't have crews leave until noon the next day.
It's one of those fires that tests you to the limit. Everyone was tired when that was done. I've never been more tired than I was after that fire.
Luckily, everyone made it out alive, but the building suffered extensive damage. Within hours, our sponsor, Belfour Property Restoration, was on scene to assess that damage and hopefully return the apartment to its past glory.
There's more than just the damage to the top floors. There's smoke, there's water throughout. So even if we are able to repair those 3rd and 4th floors, the entire building will need to be rehabbed.
There's 2 options here that we're assessing. One is going to be to remove the 4th floor down to the 3rd floor ceiling. The other option is to look at completely taking the building down to the ground at this point.
With buildings like this that have been in the Portland area for over 100 years, there's a history here. When something like this comes down, it affects an entire community.
As the community waits to find out the fate of the May apartments, everyone can take pride in the many heroes who stepped up that day. From those 911 operators who rose to the occasion when their computers were down, to the brave firefighters.
Our logo says always ready, always there, and that's essentially what we did that day.
It's incredible, the type of individual that is drawn to this job. We serve our community, we do everything we possibly can, we commit a lot, we risk a lot in the opportunity to save a lot.
And of course, one selfless maintenance man who refused to leave anyone behind.
He really performed a lot of miraculous, courageous effort prior to our arrival, setting the stage for us to be as successful as we are.
The most important thing for me was the people. That's all that mattered.
Coming up, firefighters raced to find an unconscious man in a furious fire.
In the situation he was in and the fire conditions in that house, he probably didn't have much time left.
Experienced it. We're driving down the road, we hear sirens, so we pull over. Then we just have to wonder where those brave first responders are going and hope for the best.
Well, this is the story of a team of heroes who got the call and, thanks to fast actions, arrived in time to truly make a difference.
Sacramento, with a population of just over 500,000, is the capital of California. The Sacramento Metro Fire Department is tasked with protecting not just the city, but the surrounding area.
Metro Fire makes up a good majority of Sacramento County, so we cover a lot of the county itself and parts of unincorporated areas.
We're a large agency, 41 stations, covering over 600 square miles, and we're running 110,000 calls a year.
David Mealy was raised in suburban Sacramento. After his parents passed away, he moved into their home to get it ready to be sold. But just days later, his plans would change drastically.
This particular Saturday, I was just exhausted, so I took a nap, got woken up about an hour later to the sounds of the fire alarm.
During the renovation of his parents' home, David had installed up-to-date smoke detectors, which would likely save his life. A garbage can on David's deck had caught fire and now was blowing flames inside the house.
I went out to the opposite side of the house, and I could tell that it was already way too far out of control for me to do something. Half of the living room is already gone. I looked at that and I was like, I gotta get out of here. I ran back to the bathroom, grabbed my phone, called 911, and that's the last thing I remember.
In a matter of moments, David passed out from the toxic smoke.
I think it was literally just like lights out, like the hypnotist said, you're going down right now.
David now laid there unconscious, while the flames engulfed the entire home. Luckily, neighbors called 911.
Roscoe, line to the Bravo! There was heavy fire showing, also heavy smoke coming from the front door. Some of our biggest issues we face are what we call outside-in fires, fires that start on the outside of the house and then get pushed into the house. So it's very crucial that, one, we attack the interior of the house as fast and aggressively as we can, but we also have to put out the exterior fire.
109, Ninja 21, we're on scene. We got a line going down the Bravo.
Then one of the bystanders came up to me and said, she thinks somebody's in there. I said, point where they are. And she pointed to the left side of the building.
All right, Ross, so we're gonna take this around the back.
He broke out one of the larger windows and entered the home. But it was actually a bathroom. And firefighter Tyler Williamson found himself head first in a smoke-filled tub.
When I came in through that window, I was expecting it to be a bedroom. There was a lot of smoke. I couldn't see anything. So I'm searching. The conditions deteriorated rapidly on me, and it got a lot worse, as we say. And eventually, I was searching on my hands and knees, feeling the hallway, reaching out, trying to see if I can find anybody or anything.
It was really hot conditions in there, even for Tyler with all of his gear on, so now you can imagine what the victim's feeling. In the situation he was in and the fire conditions in that house, he probably didn't have much time left before it would not have been a survivable victim.
Coming up, first responders race against the clock to rescue David from that horrific blaze.
He wasn't breathing, and he was burnt.
But first, a few fire safety tips to keep you and your loved ones safe.
In the chance that you find yourself trapped in a structure fire, you might think it wise to open doors or break a window. But these actions could have the opposite effect than intended.
Opening a door may create a vacuum and spread the fire. Only open a door if you feel no heat, then use the crack and peek method by opening the door slightly, ensuring the coast is clear. And never open windows to get fresh air. This allows the fire to gain more oxygen and grow.
For more information, check out one of the many fire safety sites online. The more you know, the safer you'll be.
David Mealy passed out as a toxic smoke billowed through his burning home. Firefighter Tyler Williamson broke through a window to try to find David, but the fire was strong and very hot. Tyler was crawling on his hands and knees and knew time was running out.
It took me a second to kind of figure out, is this a victim? Is this a pile of clothes? Is this an animal?
He realized pretty quickly that this was the person that he was searching for, but David was on the brink of death.
I didn't spend a lot of time assessing him medically. He wasn't breathing and he was burnt.
Tyler was concerned that he would not be able to get David out alone, so he tried to radio for backup.
There was so much other radio traffic going on and other things that were happening then. It didn't work out that way. I actually left Dave where he was momentarily, jammed back out to the windowsill, yelled to the firefighter that was out there, got a victim, give me some help. That allowed him to call it in on the radio and me to go back to work.
At that time, I heard that victim was found on the side of the house, so I ran over there. I saw the window that Tyler had taken out.
When I got back to Dave, so I picked him up, dragged him out of there down the hallway. I remember seeing the hands reaching in from the outside, the other firefighters.
Now the challenge was to get David over the bathtub and out the window. Tyler was able to lift David's body and get him into the awaiting hands of the firefighters outside.
Captain J.D. Flint was able to catch the victim.
He handed him out the window to me, and then I ran him over to the ambulance I was waiting and put him on the gurney. And then they were able to transport to the hospital.
David was rushed to the ICU with third-degree burns and poisoning in his lungs from cyanide, which is sometimes found in household fabrics. David now faced a long and difficult road to recovery.
So it was 30 days in ICU, 30 days in the main hospital, 30 days at a skilled nursing facility. It took that month to learn how to walk and do occupational therapy. Here's how you do your groceries, real simple stuff that you would think I never have to relearn. You actually do have to relearn.
David is still dealing with the residual effects of the fire, but he is living his life one day at a time.
Definitely living more in the moment, caring less about the things that bother me. It's just you put bigger value on your good relationships because those are the things that you can't do without.
Not only did Tyler save a life that day, but he's using his body cam footage to help other first responders.
I think that's one of the things that I'm most proud of about this particular incident. The department was willing to support us in creating a web series. We're all trying to share our lessons learned so that we could be better at our jobs, so that we could do our job.
Thank you so much for the work that you do, the dedication, the selflessness. Watching that footage, you can tell that these guys know that it's a life and death situation. 2 or 3 minutes, either way, could have meant that it was a recovery operation, not a rescue operation.
No matter what, these brave first responders are fearless, always rallying to protect lives.
And when they jump into action, we leap into gratitude. And while we're on that subject, we want to thank you for joining us right here on Hearts of Heroes. We'll see you next time.